Yes, hello and welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty Show. The best two are with you tonight, me and James. We are here. It is NFL draft week. James, we've finally made it. We've been speaking about this draft for a long time now. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, as you say, draft week. If you're playing Dynasty fantasy football, then this is really your Super Bowl, I guess, kind of thing. Like this is what everything's building up to for the last few months. Yeah, it's a shame that Mr. Rookie Mock Draft Mags is not here with us tonight, but I'm sure he's here in spirit and will help us along. But yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, good. Cannot wait for Thursday night. Cannot wait for tonight's show. Hopefully, I'm not going to drop out like I did last week. But you and Mags finished the show in style, so you didn't need me in the end. But James, as it is the NFL draft this week, I thought I'd just leave with a couple of questions. The first one being the talk of Ashton Genty. There's been a lot of talk about where he's going to end up. A lot of people have thought the Bears are a lock. They were favourites for a long time to be Ashton Genty's destination. And then it seemed to have been the Raiders at 106. It could be a little bit early for them, but that sort of makes a lot of sense. But then this past week, there's been a lot of talk that actually he may even go higher than that. So there's talk to him going as high as pick 4 to the Patriots. There's a lot of talk, especially today, that he could go, or he is the preferred target of I guess, Liam Cohen at the Jags at pick 5. So with that, I just thought we'd make our prediction on where we think Ashton Genty lands. Is it going to be one of these 4 picks, or is it going to be somewhere else completely different? And also, which of these 4, so Patriots, Jags, Raiders, Bears in round 1, do you think is the best spot for Genty for fantasy?
So my prediction, I think I'm still going to go with the Bears. I just think there's too many. These other teams have got too many other positions that they need to sort out. And I think there's been multiple sources that have been saying this. But if the Jags, for example, draft Genty at 5, he'd be the 6th highest paid running back, which is pretty ridiculous for a rookie, right? Like that's just it just shouldn't be happening. And they're just all these the Bears seem to be the team. Obviously, it makes sense because they're the team picking later on that are the best set up to just drop a running back in and for it to change their offense. And yeah, and that also means to me that's where I prefer him to go. I think normally with our fantasy assets, we kind of want them to be drafted as high in the draft or as early as possible, right? We prefer him to be picked 4th than 10th, but I think we kind of already know that Genty's the best running back in this draft, so the draft capital isn't really that relevant unless something ridiculous happens and we find something out about him that means he drops into the 20s or 30s, which is just not going to happen. So yeah, if he can fall to the Bears at 10, that's great. I think that's the best place for him. I think in a ridiculous situation he could even get to the 12 for the Cowboys, which would also be great. Or maybe someone drafts up for him, like the Broncos or something like that trades up for him, like the Broncos. But yeah, I'm sticking with the Bears. I just think those other teams have got too many other holes to fill.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it in terms of best landing spot for dynasty situation. I think for Genty would be absolutely perfect for the Bears. Ben Johnson coming across. We've seen what happened with the Detroit run game with Gibbs, Montgomery. It was absolutely dominant. So I think that is the best landing spot. Outside of that, there's talks that the Broncos want to trade up, but I think the asking price to trade up from pick 20 to, ahead of the Bears at pick 10 is going to be too much for them to pay up for that. So I'm going to go Raiders at pick 6. I think is still his most realistic landing spot. I think that they're transforming their team with Pete Carroll. They want to win right now. Geno Smith. So I think he gives them a shot at really improving their offense. And I think that is my second preferred destination out of the 4 of these, but probably the most realistic.
Yeah.
And then secondly, this is more related to after the draft. So picking in our rookie draft. So just wanted to pick your mind about, do you have like a cutoff for players in your mind, as in players that you want to select and then players that you want to avoid? So a lot of people their rule is that if the wide receiver that is touted to go, day one, early day two, if they land outside the top 50, then they completely avoid them. Is that an approach that you take, James? Or perhaps do you say if they drop outside of day two, if they drop to day three, that's a red flag for you? That's a situation that you're going to move on from, even if it was a player that you liked. Do you have a cutoff when it comes to your rookie mocks for, not rookie mocks, your rookie drafts for, say, wide receivers?
I think in general, I would be looking for day two players. I wouldn't say top 50, but if they've, as long as they've gone in the first 2 days of the draft, I'm kind of happy out of. It just depends on what the reason is that they've fallen, I guess. If we're looking at, let's think of an example in this class, like Luther Burden or someone like that, because he's been mocked in the second round. Say he ended up going late day three, then that would be quite something, because early on we were kind of thinking he's going to be a top 2 wide receiver drafted. So, if there's sort of like 7 or 8 wide receivers gone ahead of him, then you've got to start thinking about sort of why that's happened. But I guess it doesn't mean that I'm not going to draft him. If it gets later, sort of end of the second or third round in a rookie draft, then that doesn't mean that you're not going to take a flyer on him. Then obviously it just means you just push him down your ranks and your board. But in general, I think that as long as they're in the first 2 days, and then you've got to start looking at what are the other factors. Like I think for example, in this running back class this year, if someone is drafted in the 4th round, I'm not going to sort of deduct points from them compared to someone that's drafted in the 3rd round, because we just know that there are so many sort of decent running backs that can certainly play a role in the NFL in this draft that it's not worth having that line in the sand. You've got to be flexible with these things. But maybe for other positions this year, it might have more of an impact than running backs. But I think generally, like I said, first 2 days is what I'd be looking for really. But then you've got to sort of take it on a case by case and see what the reasons are.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I don't have a specific cutoff. I think if you look at stats, and I think that a lot of people have brought up recently that if you're out a wide receiver drafted outside the top 40, then your chances of hitting are severely hampered. So that is their cutoff is even the top 40 now. I tend to think that that's not my cutoff. I look at situation, and it just means, as you mentioned there, I'm more likely to just drop them down a few spots and perhaps boost up a running back, even if they land, a bit later on. And especially in this draft, as you mentioned, that I think that because there's so many good running backs that you may see them go later, because teams are able to wait on a running back and still get a good one a couple of rounds later than what they usually would in the years past. So, really interesting. I think this is a unique draft compared to the last few years. So really be interesting to see how people attack it. And with that, we'll bring on our 2-round pre-draft, our final pre-draft rookie mock. So we're going to go 2 rounds, super flex format, tight end premium, and we're using a real life NFL mock draft. This is the one that the PFF analysts have put together, or is this the one that the NFL? No, it's the NFL one.
NFL one. Chad Reuter. I'm not sure how to say his name. The 7-round mock from him, on the 18th of April, so fairly recent.
That's right. 4 days ago. We debated over the two, but the PFF one we felt that the landing spots were a little bit unrealistic. We're sticking with the more realistic chalky draft, as in the more hopefully realistic outcome for your rookie draft. So I'm up with a 101. It's not going to be setting anything on light here. My 101 is Ashton Janty, who went earlier than expected at the 104 to the Patriots. So we did touch on this as a spot. It's probably our least favorite spot of the 4 likely scenarios. It doesn't include the Broncos, but 104. It's obviously fantastic draft capital for a running back. You think that the likes of Bijan Robinson went with the 8th overall pick recently, and that seems to have been the highest for the last few years. 104 it's a fantastic spot. I guess the Patriots, as we mentioned, have got a lot of a lot of needs, especially on their offensive line. I guess it would sort of limit the ceiling of Ashton Janty early on. I think that the Patriots have work to do, and I guess it wouldn't be 2025 you expected them to compete for the playoffs, but probably 2026. So you could probably write off the first season as, okay one. You hope he doesn't get injured. But I just think that the usage is going to be there. They've obviously still got Ramondre Stevenson in this case. So it'd be a pretty deadly 1-2 punch. I still think Ramondre has some juice left. But obviously Ashton Janty with the fourth pick with this capital would be their lead back. And an ascending offense, obviously Drake May I really, really like. They've got they've got some new playmakers there. And I just think that this isn't going to be the Patriots team of old. It's going to look better in 2025. And then with 2026, hopefully with a better offensive line, it's going to look even better. So it was a toss-up between these first two picks for me, but I'm still going to lean Ashton Janty just because I think that he's got the biggest upside, and I think he is elite from day one. So how do you feel about me picking Janty with the one arm? Were you surprised with that landing spot of the Patriots?
Yeah, it's a bit of a surprising landing spot, isn't it? Because I think up until the last sort of week or two, everyone's been kind of saying that pick 6 is the first pick where he can go. And then, more recently, the Patriots and I've forgotten now, we've spoken about them already. Who's pick 5? Jaguars. Have been sort of discussed a bit more. It makes more sense for the Jaguars, I think, than it does the Patriots. But really, they should both be looking to solve other issues. And like you said, the offensive line for the Patriots, they need to be keeping Drake May upright. So that really should be their focus. But for Dynasty, that isn't a huge concern for us because those things can be resolved later on. And we're not picking Janty based on how he's going to perform this season. We're picking him for the next 5-6 years or however long it is. And obviously with that backfield with Ramondre, I guess that's a minor sort of flag, I guess. I think he signed 4 years or something like that last season, but maybe if they're picking a running back this high, they look to trade him. But it doesn't change. 101 is still Ashton Janty unless something ridiculous happens and he goes pick 20 or something like that. I think this is the easiest pick that you've got to make.
Yep. And moving on to the 102. This is fantastic landing spot for a guy that I had 102 anyway, and I think this would definitely boost up and secure that 102 spot for me. So you've picked Omarion Hampton at 102, who went 20th overall pick to the Broncos.
We've kind of already gone through these landing spots, and that first round, the Broncos seem to be a pretty great landing spot for a running back. I think, there's obviously discussions that they could trade up, but I think Omarion Hampton might not be the exact kind of running back they're looking for. I really like the idea of Travion Henderson on the Broncos, but this maybe is a little bit early for him. In terms of, a few weeks ago we did a mock and he was our 102, and this doesn't change anything. It's exactly the kind of draft capital we were looking for. We know that the Broncos want to run the ball a lot, and they were one of the least efficient teams in the league last year in terms of yards per carry. They're 4.1 yards per carry, which I think only a handful of teams were sort of lower than that. We know what Hampton's like. He's had 1,500 yards back-to-back seasons, 5.9 yards per carry. So he's going to make them a more efficient team in the running game. It's one of those really, really chalky mock draft landing spots where it would almost be shocked if this doesn't happen in real life. And he, maybe if someone's taken them ahead of him, that would be such a surprise. But if he's on the board at 20 and the Broncos go elsewhere, I think everyone will be pretty surprised by that. Hampton stays 102 for me.
Yeah, I think that his range starts from the Bears at pick 10. I think I would not be surprised if they took Hampton because I think he is that good. Broncos seem to be the most logical landing spot. I think it's near perfect. Let's just hope it works out better than when they last drafted a running back out of North Carolina in Javonte Williams, and someone that we thought was just unbelievable and untradeable, and just look how far he's fallen. So yeah, I love this because I think that you're picking a guy that in a year's time, if it all went perfectly for Myron Hampton, and the thoughts of Ashton Janty, if he was at the Patriots and maybe struggled a little bit year one, Hampton could be worth more than Janty. He could even be, it's not even out of the realms of possibility that he's the running back one in Dynasty, because that's just a perfect landing spot.
Yeah.
So with that, move on to 103, and I'm just going to go for the boring pick in Cam Ward, who landed, no surprise, with the 101 to the Titans, the first pick. I really hope on draft night that they do not wait very long to make this pick. They just run the card in, because we all know it's going to happen, but I can see them taking a while, and it's really going to annoy me. But yeah, it's just, I think he is my 103, and I think that there's no way he doesn't get picked 101 at the Titans unless they really late on were to receive his stupid offer. I think he's guaranteed to be the pick. And I just think that, yeah, he's my 103. He's in the same tier as the next guy on this list, but I just think he's a safe pick. I think he's got insulated value for the next 2 to 3 years. I think he's going to have the starting role for the next 2 to 3 years. It is a bit of a project. I think he's not guaranteed to hit, but I think that he's got a safe enough floor with a pretty high ceiling. So we talk about the other quarterbacks in this class, and there's obviously one that's got a higher ceiling in fantasy, but I think the Cam Ward, his ceiling, if everything hits, I think that he could be a top 10 quarterback, probably 9, 10 is probably his ceiling, which I think is absolutely fine if you're picking him 3 here. I think that, yeah, I like this pick. It's a safe pick. If you need a quarterback, it makes complete sense. Is there much more to add on this, James? Is it just the boring pick to go the 103? It's a safe pick, insulated value.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's no point in going on for too long. Like, everyone knows about Cam Ward. Like you say, insulated value. Like, if he doesn't perform for you in Dynasty for your first year, chances are you can trade him for an early first next year, just because that's how quarterbacks hold their value. And yeah, like, he's guaranteed to be the starter for 2 seasons, 3 seasons. So yeah, you've got plenty of time to get out. Maybe you're not going to get the exact return that you had to pay for him, but you're not going to lose too much. Whereas you could take a sort of wide receiver or running back here who is slightly riskier. We're not talking about anyone that's really risky at this stage, obviously, but there's just a higher chance that they just plummet in value than a quarterback like Cam Ward in a Superflex league anyway, of course. So yeah, there's no point in us sort of holding on for too long here.
No, we're going to move swiftly on to the 104. And this is a wide receiver that seems to be falling a little bit in mock drafts, but and in this case, he lands at pick 18 to the Seahawks. So you've gone for Tet McMillan with the 104.
Yeah, I think he was our 103 on the draft we did a few weeks ago. So he's sort of fallen one spot there, I guess, just because he's lasted until pick 18. Obviously, there's sort of a small chance that he's taken inside the top 10. So slightly worse draft capital there. Obviously, the Seahawks as a landing spot, maybe not our favourite. Sam Darnold, obviously, there now. And yeah, we're just not 100% sure on him, are we? We're not fully confident on sort of how long that's going to be the situation there. And I think they even take a quarterback in this mock draft, don't they, later on? I don't think we'll get to that, but I think this mock has them taking Quinn Ewers in the 3rd. So even in this situation that we're sort of talking about here, there's a little bit of uncertainty at quarterback, and maybe Quinn Ewers is the starter in a year or 2 or whatever. So yeah, it's maybe not the ideal scenario for McMillan, and like you say, he's been sort of falling down boards recently, but yeah, I'm still taking him as the first wide receiver in the class. And I don't hate the landing spot that much. I think it's fine. Obviously, there's JSN at the Seahawks, and Cooper Kupp now, but I think it's actually quite a well-rounded room. And obviously, we know Cooper Kupp's not going to be around for too long. So yeah, in Dynasty, 104 for me, still Tet McMillan, my wide receiver 1. At least wide receiver 1 that's a full-time wide receiver. So yeah, I'm fine taking Tet at 4.
Yeah, and I think it's a good conversation to have because situations are going to arrive where your favourite running back or wide receiver is not going to land in an ideal spot. So you have the thought of, do you move them down? But I think that for me, he would be the pick here as well. I think Ted McMillan he's my wide receiver one. I think he's cracking wide receiver. I think I wouldn't say he's elite. I can say he could maybe get there. But I think that landing at the Seahawks, I think immediately people are going to think, well, they've got JSN, Cooper Kupp there. How much volume is going to go around? But I think that he complements them really well. So I think that I put the the talent over situation. He spit out talent over situation in for Ted McMillan, and I think he's got insulated value. I think people understand that he's not going to smash year one there, but I think that there's going to be an excuse for him, and he's going to hold value. And like I say, Cooper Kupp's probably going to be a 1 year and done. So he's going to fit that wide receiver 2 role really nicely going forward from 2026. So yeah, love that at 104. 105, I took the ultra safe pick in Cam Ward at 103. I've gone for perhaps the biggest risk with Travis Hunter at 105, who went 102 to the Browns. Unanimously, a lot of people have Travis Hunter as the best player in this class. And I think that there's been a lot of steam recently for him to be full-time wide receiver early on, which, I'm really happy about that. I think, everybody in fantasy are. I think we're getting a bit more of a clearer picture about what his role is going to be. Obviously, that can mean nothing right now, but I think my confidence with him is definitely growing, where I did have him as perhaps back end of round 1. I, got more confident, moved him up to my 109 a few weeks ago, and now moved him up to my 105, 106 range, just because I think that the idea is if he lands on the Browns, and I expect him to be a Cleveland Brown at the end of the day, I think that they have got a decent enough cornerback room where he will be playing some packages at cornerback, but their weakness is definitely going to be wide receiver, playing sort of alongside Jerry Jeudy as it looks at right now. So I think that in this situation, with his ceiling being, elite, he's a very, very good wide receiver prospect in his own right. I expect him to play both ways, but I think enough wide receiver where I'm confident to take a swing on him with the middle of the first round. I wouldn't go crazy and pick him sort of 102. I think that is too early, but when it gets to the middle of the first round, that's where I'm confident taking him. Is that where you're confident taking him, James, or would you be a bit more bullish, or perhaps take him a bit further down?
Yeah, I'm similar. I think this is maybe a pick or two earlier than I would. But if you think that let's just say this is your pick, you're the 105 because you finished the fifth worst team in your league, then it's a kind of perfect pick because your team isn't that bad that you ended up with the first overall, the second overall, but you're kind of on the verge, and this is the kind of player that can make you a real contender if he is a full-time wide receiver, like we kind of said. So yeah, I'm happy taking him here, like I said, but early on, 102, 103, definitely be looking elsewhere. And yeah, the Browns, I think, is one of the teams where we can see him kind of having more playing time as a wide receiver. So yeah, that's certainly a reason to be sort of picking him a little bit higher. Say if he went to the Giants at 103 instead, then obviously they've already got Malik Neighbors, which that'd be a great wide receiver for him to sort of have, wouldn't it? But the volume, I guess, is not going to be as high, and they're not going to be kind of that reliant on him because they've already got an elite wide receiver, whereas the Browns definitely don't. So yeah, 105, I think he's just on the verge for me. I probably wouldn't take him there. I'm happy you did, so that I don't have to. So yeah, just on the verge for me.
Yeah, it was definitely a toss-up between Travis Hunter and your player that you picked at the 106. So I think it's a perfect destination in Trevion Henderson, pick 44, sort of early second round to the Cowboys. Do you love this landing spot as much as me, James?
Yeah, I guess it's almost perfect sort of landing spot, isn't it? Cowboys. We would have rather it be pick 12 in the first round, but we kind of mentioned that seems a little bit too high Henderson at this stage. Not really seen him mocked that high at all. It's always sort of been on the 20s onward. I think it's tricky in a rookie mock where I'm taking someone sort of mid-second round ahead of quite a few people that were taken early mid-first round. But where did we have him before in our draft a month ago? It was around this same spot, and we didn't really expect him to be drafted much higher than this. So there's no real reason to sort of change things too much. Elite landing spot. I think we saw Rico Dowdle put up really good, really solid fantasy numbers last year, and having done nothing before that. And Henderson's obviously an explosive prospect that everyone's kind of excited about, and I think we'd be kind of taking him around this range regardless of what team he goes for. But as it's the Cowboys' first half of the first round, I'm more than happy to take him there. Not much more to say, I guess.
Yeah, no, I love this landing spot. Obviously, I think that there's a chance that he goes round 1 in the NFL draft. But if he falls just outside in early day 2 to a spot that he's crying out for running back right now, obviously they've picked up Javonte Williams, but he's not going to be a workhorse back at this stage of his career. I think this is just a perfect spot where there's, outside of CeeDee Lamb, and perhaps they've taken a wide receiver in round 1. We'll have to find out in a couple of picks. But there's not that many weapons there, and I think that he would just be perfect in this offense with his explosive style. With him, CeeDee Lamb, and another wide receiver, I think it would be a big upgrade for the Cowboys. So love that at 106. 107, I've gone for perhaps more of a safer pick, and I've sort of boosted this wide receiver up because of the capital. So it is Emeka Egbuka, went pick 19 to the Packers. I think they must have traded with my Buccaneers to get up and take Egbuka. The Packers landing spot is not actually one that is that favourable to me. I think it is an open wide receiver room, and I think that day 1, Egbuka will walk in and be the best wide receiver in that room. They do like to spread the ball out, which does worry me for Egbuka. But I think that ultimately we know that he's such a safe wide receiver. The only worry for me is that if he falls out of round 1 and falls to a spot in round 2 that's not favourable, that will perhaps concern me and drop him down for me. But the fact that he went middle of round 1, to the Packers, is going to be their number 1 wide receiver from day 1. And I'm not expecting elite numbers from Egbuka. I think that he's just been putting up good, solid numbers his whole career. Don't see that changing. I think he's a really, really solid wide receiver 2. So to get him sort of at the middle towards the back of round 1, it feels like decent value to me on Egbuka. James, do you like Egbuka? Would you have gone somewhere else with this pick, or perhaps just talk about the Packers wide receiver room, because there's a lot of names there, and it's not always easy to know which to play.
I hate that wide receiver room. I hate it for fantasy. But you've kind of have hit the nail on the head in that Egbuka is reliable, and those other wide receivers are not reliable for so many reasons. I think they've all got a different reason. Like, obviously, Christian Watson looked like at one point he was going to be their wide receiver 1, but he can't get on the field because he's always injured. You've got Romeo Doubs, who can get on the field, but then I think he was like banned by the team or something last year, was he, at one point? And is obviously not as explosive as Christian Watson, or Jaden Reed, who I really like, but for some reason last year would just have games where he was just not on the field at all, 0 targets, or certainly 0 fantasy points. And at the end of last season in the playoffs, it was just impossible to play him. It was like you didn't even know if he was going to get 1 catch. It was horrible. At least if Egbuka, I mean, Egbuka goes there and it's exactly the same situation, and you just don't know. But like you said, he's reliable, and I think they've sort of been screaming out for that, to have someone that, well, at least we have it in terms of fantasy, because we like the offense. Jordan Love's obviously an ascending quarterback, and we're more than happy to sort of start him every week. So if we got a reliable sort of asset to stack with him, that'd be great. So I'd like this, because at least it then means I don't have to worry about thinking about starting Jaden Reed, and I can just leave him on the bench. So yeah, I don't mind the landing spot as sort of that much for those kind of reasons. And yeah, pick 19 is sort of towards the top sort of range of where we've sort of seen him go in mocks. I think I've not really seen him go too much higher than that. I was kind of hoping that he falls to pick 29 as the Commanders. I think it's pick 29 that they're picking anyway. And they get that Ohio State wide receiver room with Terry McLaurin as well. So yeah, that'd be nice. But in terms of fantasy, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that they traded up to get him as well, I think that means that they've obviously got a clear plan for him. So that was the 107. The 108, you've gone for one of my guys here, James, and he was definitely in consideration for my pick at 107. Matthew Golden, who did land at pick 12 for the Cowboys. I think this is probably the earliest you're going to see him possibly go, but in my eyes, it's just a perfect landing spot for him.
Yeah, after Hunter is obviously in this mock draft that we're looking at here, he's the first wide receiver taken. So he's out. We're taking him as the fourth, I guess. Yeah, we're taking him as the fourth, but he's the first one after Hunter, so the second in the mock draft. So I guess an element of that is that we know for sure that he's not going to be the number one on his offense because obviously CeeDee Lamb's there. But like you kind of mentioned with Henderson a couple of picks ago, like that offense would just be dynamic with sort of Lamb, Henderson, Golden there, and obviously Prescott might not be everyone's favorite quarterback, but we've seen him put up really good, really strong fantasy numbers in the past, and he's always sort of been able to support CeeDee Lamb and one other pass catcher. We've seen Cowboys tight ends have really good seasons, no matter who they are. So if they can finally get that kind of second pass catcher that's a wide receiver, a bit more dynamic than a tight end, then yeah, I see it as a great landing spot. And yeah, like you said, 12th pick for the Cowboys is really good draft capital as well. So yeah, 108, it could even be higher. I might have taken him at 107 ahead of Egbuka, but I don't mind either there. So yeah, it's a solid spot for me.
Yeah, I think come draft night, if this actually happened, if he went pick 12 to the Cowboys, I think Twitter would have a little bit of a mini meltdown just because there's so many haters on Twitter for Matthew Golden. They just think he's so overrated, and for him to go pick 12, I think that the NFL has been telling us for weeks or perhaps months now that they really like Matthew Golden, yet the fantasy community just seems to not be on board with him. So it would be interesting to see if this happened, where he ends up in rookie mocks. And I think this is probably the most realistic spot at pick sort of 107, 108 if he did go that high. I've personally got him at the back of round 1 at the minute. So that's thinking that he probably goes towards the back of round 1. So if he was to go this early, then I'd have to move him up my board, because I think the ceiling's there. As you mentioned, he's not going to be the wide receiver 1 because of CeeDee Lamb, but Dak Prescott can easily provide for 2 wide receivers, at least being top 24 wide receivers in fantasy. So yeah, really like the spot, and really like the spot at 109 as well. So this is where the first of our tight ends comes off the board. This is Colston Loveland, so there's actually the second tight end off the board in this NFL mock. But for him to land at pick 22 with the Chargers, I just think that is just ultimately the perfect landing spot. The Michigan connection, Loveland's stats at Michigan is just absolutely insane. He was their number 1 sort of receiver. He was, he looks like an NFL tight end already, the way that he moves. He's just such a clever wide receiver. He gets open. He's a great target in the red zone. I just think that he can produce right away. And if you put him on a team with Justin Herbert, you've got Lad McConkey also moving the sticks, moving the chains. I just think that, you cannot get a more perfect landing spot. Whereas I think that we've moved down the other sort of elite tight end that is going to go early in this class because of landing spot. I think this one, especially in a tight end premium, this is probably the lowest you're going to see him get picked. If he goes pick 22 to the Chargers in a tight end premium, perhaps if it's a plus 1.5 or whatever, he's probably going to go earlier than this. But I'm picking him at 109. If I can get him there, I'm absolutely delighted with that. And his ceiling for Dynasty on the Chargers, he'd probably be straight away a top 5 Dynasty tight end for me if he lands on the Chargers in round 1. So Would he be that high for you, James Loveland? Obviously, you're a fan of Loveland. This is a pretty perfect spot. What do you think his ceiling in Dynasty could be?
Yeah, when you said it, I thought it sounded a bit high, but thinking about it, it's not unrealistic either, because we just don't have that many tight ends that were kind of really comfortable starting every week. And yeah, Johnny Smith was a tight end one in terms of fantasy points at sort of second half of last season, wasn't he? So yeah, I think ever since Harbaugh went to the Chargers, we've been, the last 2 seasons anyway, everyone's been mocking him to sort of take these Michigan guys, and it kind of hasn't necessarily played out that way. But yeah, in this situation, love the landing spotlight. I think was it Hunter Henry a few years ago? I think it was in Herbert's rookie season. Hunter Henry was like, he was an elite sort of tight end for that 1 year. So yeah, we've seen Herbert target tight ends heavily. We just haven't had sort of a reliable tight end on the Chargers in recent seasons. And yeah, it's a great landing spot. Obviously, the draft capital is exactly kind of where we're anticipating Loveland. And like you say, in a tight end premium, you're really not going to be able to get him much later. I don't really like taking tight ends at this early. Obviously, we had Brock Bowers last year, it did work out if you took him at this sort of stage, but I think we have to treat him more as the exception to the rule. But look, you're just not going to be able to get Loveland any later than this. So I'm fine with the pick. It's one of those where I'm kind of happy that you did it and not me. But at some point they're going to have to go off the board. And in a real mock, rookie draft, he wouldn't be there any later than this. So someone's going to buy into the hype. So it's fine at this stage.
Yeah, honestly, I think in a tight end premium, depending on how big that premium is, I think that you're going to see these two guys go off the board. Wouldn't be surprised 104, 105. It's going to be that early. So, 110. We'll move it along pretty quickly now. You've gone for another quarterback off the board. Absolutely love this pick. Jackson Dart, 9th overall pick to the Saints. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders was off the board at this stage in the NFL mock. So Jackson Dart, 3 quarterbacks in the top 10. That'd be a bit of a surprise to me. But if it happened, he's easily going to go this high in rookie draft. So yeah, Jackson Dart at 110. Yeah,
exactly like you said. If he's getting picked 9th overall by the Saints, this is similar to the conversation we've just had with the tight ends. You're just not going to be able to get him any later than this. It's just going to be the range that he goes. And like you said, Shedeur Sanders went earlier than him. We'll touch on that later. But I think the situation here with Jackson Dart is, if the Saints are taking him at 9th overall, he's starting games for them this season, because we've got this Derek Carr injury, which we found out about in last couple of weeks, where we don't actually know when he's going to be playing. And I just think, if they're taking a quarterback this early, with their kind of roster and everything like that, it means that they're in love with him and they want to be starting him. And maybe we're not overly confident in starting him in our fantasy lineups this first season, but it's not going to be season 2. We're kind of going to have seen what he's about, and we're going to have that sort of idea of, is he their long-term starter and things like that. And it's just we've said, we're just not going to get him any earlier than this. He had to be taken by someone. And in terms of draft capital, this is as good as he can hope for. There's surely no scenario where he goes higher than this. It would have to take a big trade up from someone. I just can't see it. Perfect draft capital and sort of landing spot for him. And so pick 10 in a rookie mock is kind of where I'm happy taking him.
Yeah, I think we've been saying it for a few weeks now, perhaps even months, where the situation is he was getting round 1 buzz quite a while ago, and we just said you need to be ready to take Jackson Dart round 1 when people don't like Jackson Dart, but if he's getting picked top 10, top half of the draft, you're going to have to take him in round 1, and I think this is the perfect spot, or even earlier. So moving on to 111, I just want to say this is a personal message to Matt, the weatherman. Caleb Johnson absolutely sucks, but I am taking him here at the 111. He landed early round 3, pick 72 to the Bears. So there's a lot of talk that the Bears obviously want one of these, top 5 running backs, and they land the 5th guy, not the 2nd guy. So Matt, he's definitely not RB2 of this class, but yeah, I've got him as RB5, and I think that this would be a really, really nice spot for Caleb Johnson. So he lands day 2. Obviously, a lot of people think that he could go in round 2, but he slips to the 3rd round. I'm okay with that. Really, really love the landing spot for the Bears. Ben Johnson, it couldn't get much more perfect for, one of these top 5 running backs. Any of them land there, then I think you're going to have to draft them, probably top half of round 1, but a 3rd round guy. So I'm passing up on a lot of players that got picked, of a round 1 or even, round 2, to pass on and go with a 3rd round, running back. But yeah, I think that it would be just perfect for fantasy, and he would produce right from day 1. So 111, Caleb Johnson. We're going to move on to 112. James, I absolutely love this spot. You're going for another quarterback in Jalen Milroe, who went the 201 to the Browns. Yeah, this is we've not mocked him in the round 1 yet.
Yeah.
So, but I think in this scenario, if it was to happen, then you'd have to take him round 1.
Yeah, I got to pick 10, and I thought we need to be taking these quarterbacks. This is a super flex mock draft. The quarterbacks need to be going. This is just what's going to happen in a real rookie draft. They're just not going to be on the board. And I really wanted to take Milroe at the 10th pick, but at that stage I did kind of go to the draft capital. I know that, yeah, we'd be way more excited about Milroe as a fantasy asset. It's just the longevity and knowing is he going to be the starter long term. If it's the Browns that take him at 201, then there's not really anyone there that's going to be blocking him from being their starter. Not maybe not this year, but certainly the season after. You don't draft a quarterback that range, surely, and unless you're going to be picking in the top 3 or 4 picks the season after, he's going to get an opportunity. Is basically what I'm saying. Unless they're that bad again that they're picking in the top 3, and they can pick a quarterback there. So yeah, he's obviously, we're really excited about the sort of rushing floor, the potential for him to score loads of touchdowns, really explosive on the ground. Obviously there are some flaws, otherwise he wouldn't be getting picked sort of this stage. But yeah, at this stage, this is almost a 2nd round pick. So yeah, I'm more than happy to sort of take a flyer on someone that really could be a top end fantasy asset, and no one else that we've got left is going to come close to the ceiling that you could get out of Milroe. He's just obviously got that much lower floor, but yeah, at the end of the 1st round, it's worth the flyer, especially if this is your actual pick and you won the league and you're picking 12th overall, 12th in the 1st round. Then this is an amazing pick to have, because that can really set you up long term. It might be a little bit different if this is a pick that you've traded off someone else and you've really got to rebuild your roster. But even then, he's a great gamble to take, because he can really push your team on if he is that sort of asset that we want him to be. So yeah, end of the 1st round, Jalen Milroe, happy with that.
Yep, absolutely love that. I think that once I get to the end of round 1, I'm just ready to light the pick on fire if need be. And I think Jalen Milroe is just the perfect dart throw, the perfect wild card to go for at the back of round 1 in this situation if he does go early day 2 to the Browns. So we're going to move on really quickly through round 2. So 201, this pick doesn't excite me because of the landing spot. I think it was Quinshon Judkins, pick 26 in round 2, so pick 58th overall to the Texans. Obviously, they've got Joe Mixon there, and Joe Mixon was really good last year. It still looks like he's got it. I guess he'll probably have one more year, and I guess it's the thought they draft their running back of the future now. It's a really good 1-2 punch. I think Quinshon Judkins is so athletic, explosive. Not so much the pass catcher, but in and out the tackles just makes you look silly. Had a really, really good combine, really good pre-draft process. Perhaps I'd like to see him go earlier than this, and obviously to a spot where he has a chance to be the running back 1 on the team straight away. But I can't let him fall much further. He's On paper, he's sort of my 108. I think I've got him. So I don't want to let him fall too far. Still going for the talent. Quinton Judkins, 201. 202, this is where our second tight end comes off the board, James. So you've got Tyler Warren, who went at pick 13. So I think they may have made a trade there to the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, and again, it just had to come off the board at some point. It's not going to be. It's really unlikely that you're getting to see a tight end drafted at pick 13, and he's in a tight end premium league. He's still there at 202. Obviously, we've downgraded him because we just hate the landing spot. Things can change. Obviously, maybe Anthony Richardson isn't as bad, or maybe Daniel Jones turns his career around, as we've seen with the likes of Geno and Darnold in sort of recent seasons. When they get to that third, fourth team, whatever it is, they kind of finally it all comes together. It's at the moment it just seems like a horrible landing spot. Obviously, the draft capital was great, and in this situation, they've even traded up for him. It's just he had to come off the board. It's interesting to see if this is actually how things sort of fall in the consensus rookie rankings, if this kind of thing happens, because I think the Colts is quite a likely landing spot. And it'd be interesting to see how people have him and Loveland ranked. I think I'd probably still have Warren slightly ahead if it was me. But obviously that's not how it's sort of fallen in our mock here. But it'd be really interesting to see if this sort of situation does play out.
Yep. We'll move on to the 203, where I picked the second best wide receiver in Iowa State, Jalen Noel, who obviously in his own right is a very good wide receiver, an ascending wide receiver that is, much to my dismay, getting picked ahead of Jaden Higgins in some mock drafts now. And, this was the case, got picked at 209. So pick 41 to the Bears, which is maybe a little bit higher than I'm expecting. And on paper, the Bears situation is, looks a bit more of a crowded wide receiver room. But I have to just think that, if the Bears are picking Jalen Noel at early day two, round two, that they're going to have a specific plan of how to use him. And we know with his speed, he's got elite assets there. So if he can put it all together and be a really, really good complement to, Rome Odunze, so you got Keenan Allen at the minute, but he's getting on. I think that he can be a really, really big weapon for Ben Johnson and the Bears in the future. So to get him at pick 203, I feel really good about that. 204, you've gone for another quarterback, James. This is a guy that's been picked super early, 106, and it's Shedeur Sanders. So a lot of people really like him, but that landing spot has moved him down in this draft to the Raiders.
Yeah, it's moved him down to me just because I'm a Geno fan. I think that realistically he's going to be the starter for 2 years. I think I find it hard to see that he's not going to be. I don't know the exact contract details, but I'm pretty sure there's easy outs for them after 2 years, not 1 year. So it's just you struggle to see Sanders be a starter within the next 2 years. And I'd be fine taking him earlier if I knew he was going to start after one season, or at least have a chance to. But I just find it hard to see that. And then if it is 2 years, Pete Carroll's the head coach. Like, how old is Pete Carroll? Like, how long is he going to be around? There could be a completely new front office head coach situation by the time that Sanders is actually starting, and then maybe they give him a year, and then they think, actually, we want our own guy. So it's just hard for me to pull the trigger on him earlier. But again, it's another one of those where I think he should be off the board earlier than this, and it's really difficult to leave a quarterback drafted in the top 6 picks to fall sort of almost mid-second round. But it's just tough to pull the trigger earlier, and that's why he's fallen this far for us. I don't think this is a realistic real life landing spot, and I don't think it's a realistic rookie mock landing spot. But in this scenario, this is where he's gone, and I think he would be off the board earlier if this was a real life situation. But I think it's actually I'm twisting myself up here in saying the same things, but I can't see him falling further than this if this is what happens. But I can't see this happening. If that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. I will just say, because it's a strange one. This mock is, I think is very accurate in a number of ways, but this is a strange one because the whole time we've been hearing about Ashton Janty, a runner back at 106, which obviously would help out that offense big time, but for them to then go for Shador Sanders and go for a quarterback that doesn't help them at all in year one is strange. But I guess it's like a Michael Penix situation where we really did not expect him to go pick 8 last year. And, a lot of people didn't know what to do in terms of drafting him. And if you took him at the back of round 1, or I saw him even go early round 2, then, that's a really, really good pick now. So, yeah, I agree. I think that he would probably have to be picked a bit earlier than this if it happened. Pick 205, I've gone for Trey Harris. I think this is probably the exact spot I have him in terms of my pre-draft ranking. So for him to go on, he's gone sort of late round 2, pick 57 to the Panthers. I think that it's a great landing spot in terms of the Panthers. They've not got great wide receiver depth there. See, Jalen Coker emerged. You've got some bodies there, and you've got Adam Thielen, the corpse of Adam Thielen. That, I mean, how much longer is he going to go on? You've got an okay quarterback in Bryce Young. I just think that Trey Harris could come in and just really set that wide receiver room alight. So he has a chance to be their wide receiver 1. And this may be a range where I'm looking at runner backs, but in terms of this mock, sort of the landing spot, draft capital of some of the runner backs wasn't great. And I just think that there's so much upside with Trey Harris that I'm happy to take him in the middle of round 2. Moving on to 206. So this is Luther Burden. This is a guy that actually would definitely drop in the situation. I feel he went in round 1, which is great because, there is talks that he's been falling out of round 1, but he went pick 32 to the Rams, James.
Yeah, so I just had a quick check. He went 106 in our mock we did a month ago. So this is one where it's the landing spot has really changed for us. I guess the Rams have obviously got Puka and they've got Devontae Adams. Obviously, Adams is going to be there for probably a couple of years. And I guess we also don't know how long Stafford's going to be around for. So there are some sort of question marks there. But in this situation, like we said, the Rams have picked him at pick 32. So that means they've traded up for him. I assume, unless they traded back. I think they must have traded up. So that's quite a significant thing. I think the last couple of years, the Rams have been really smart with their draft picks, and they've kind of turned that around. After the Super Bowl, they kind of looked like they were heading in one direction, and now they're kind of playoff contender. So I feel like if they do take a Burden or any wide receiver in the first round, they've got sort of decent plans for them, and obviously we trust the offense with Sean McVay. So I think this is another one where if this kind of happens in real life, we would probably be struggling to pick in this late. But I can't really pick too many holes in the players that we picked above him either. It's just, I can't. 206 is going to be a great value for Burden, I think. And like I said, he was 106 a month ago for us. So a really good discount, I think.
Definitely, yep. Moving on to 207. So this is actually a guy that is gone in the opposite direction, a guy that's on the rise in Jaden Blue. So someone that I wanted to talk about on the last show as a late round gem, but in this case, you wouldn't be able to get him as a late round gem. So in this mock, he went round 2, went the 23rd pick in round 2. So pick 55 overall to the Chargers. And like my pick of Colson Loveland to the Chargers, I absolutely love this landing spot. The draft capital, I really do like Jaden Blue, the prospect. I think he's underrated. I think he's just got great tendencies. He's electric. He's a really, really good wide receiver as well. I think he's just, not many people are talking about him. And this would be great to see him get better than expected draft capital and to a spot that, everybody likes on an elite offense that is ascending. I think that the second half of last year, I think Justin Herbert was unleashed a bit more. It wasn't that, so structured offense. And I think that we saw that in Ladd McConkey really flourished the second half of last year as well. So, really like this. Obviously, they acquired Najee Harris. And I think that he's going to be absolutely fine. But this would be a really nice compliment to Najee Harris, and I think that this would be the guy that replaces Najee Harris in perhaps a year's time. I really do think Jaden Blue's got that skill set. So, if this was the case, I'd have to take him, this high. I've been able to get him round 3, sometimes even round 4 in rookie mocks. But in this situation, you're going to have to take him back end of round 2, in my opinion. So moving on to pick 208, the best player in this draft, you've picked James. Keep it brief because I know you're not a massive fan of him.
Yeah, I had to pick him because you picked Jalen Null, so I didn't get to speak about my guy, so you don't get to speak about yours. I think this is quite late in terms of 308 for the Patriots. I'm kind of expecting Higgins to be taken in the second round. It's a little bit late, and I guess it's another reason why he's sort of on the board for us at the 208. I can't remember too many of the Patriots' other picks in this draft, but if this kind of is what happens, then he's their wide receiver 1 as far as I'm concerned. So you're more than happy taking him at the 208. It's kind of one of those where he's fallen because of the draft capital, but he's going to be a great discount because of the landing spot. So I'm really happy with Higgins at the 208. As a player, he's really reliable. He's just not as explosive as I kind of want from my wide receivers, I guess. But you can't really argue it with a 208 pick for Jaden Higgins too much. I think this is exactly where I took him in our previous mock as well. So things haven't changed for me. I think this is a fine spot to take Higgins. It's not moved him up or down too much. It's another one where I think he's probably going to be taken a little bit earlier than this in real life.
Yep, absolutely. That guy's a stud. But we'll move on to the 209, and this guy's an absolute stud as well. Cam Scatterbo. In this situation, he's gone right at the back of day 2, so round 3, pick 35. So overall 99 to the New York Giants. Absolutely love this landing spot. They've obviously got Tyrone Tracy on the depth chart, who was emerged as a rookie last year. We did not expect him to have the role that he did, and look really good for most of the season. He had some fumbling issues. He wasn't great all year. There was times where they sort of faded him a bit, and I'm a bit worried about him going forward. So I do think that it's realistic that they take a running back earlier than later in this NFL draft. So Cam Scatterbo, an absolute mountain of a guy that can catch the ball, really good in and out of the tackle. I think that he would probably take over that role from Tyrone Tracy eventually. So really do like this landing spot, and very, very happy to take him at the back end of round 2. Moving on to 210, you've grabbed another tight end here, one that we're both high on in Mason Taylor, who's gone the 19th pick in round 2, so pick 51 overall to the Broncos.
Yeah, like I said, we're both really high on Taylor. I think he's just a really solid all-round tight end that just has an NFL skill set and can be on the field straight away. I just think potentially with this landing spot, obviously they've signed Evan Ingram, haven't they? Right? I've not made that up. So he's not going to need to be sort of their primary tight end straight away because they've got Evan Ingram, who's obviously more of a sort of pass catching tight end. But I think it will be more of a traditional sort of slow build fantasy asset kind of tight end, and we'll be waiting a couple of years maybe before we're kind of confident starting Mason Taylor. But we're taking him at the back end of the second round for a reason. I think he's just going to be a really great, solid NFL tight end. He's not going to be tight end 1 for Dynasty, but he can certainly be a tight end 1 and be inside that top 12 once he's sort of a full-time player. And we kind of really like the Broncos as a landing spot. If it wasn't for them kind of having an incumbent tight end there, I think he'd be sort of going a bit higher. Draft capital also great. Second round, I think, is just the way we kind of expect him to go. So, no complaints from me. He'll stay where he is as tight end 3, I think, if this is the situation.
Yeah, I can't argue at all. That really, really like Mason Taylor and the situation. If he lands in a spot where there's not a clear tight end 1 there, he could go a lot higher than this in rookie draft. So love that pick. I've also gone for a tight end at 211. I've gone for my tight end 3, Elijah Arroyo, who landed pick 6 of round 3, so 70th overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it's just a bit of an opposite situation where, I mean, they've got Brenton Strange. See, they've just lost Evan Ingram. So, yeah, Brenton Strange is there as the tight end 1 right now. But I think that Arroyo can come in and eventually replace him. He's a different type of tight end to Brenton Strange. He's very, very much athletic, get down the field, up the seam, not your standard inline tight end. You want to get him into the slot, into their mismatches. And I think that him landing on an offense with Liam Cohen in charge is really, really exciting. So in a tight end premium, yeah, really happy to take him back in round 2. And then James, with the wild card pick to finish us off, you've gone for a quarterback that lands in a great spot with the New York Giants, a quarterback that, was it you that spoke about him a couple of weeks ago, or was it Mags?
Yeah, Mags really didn't want to hear anything about Tyler Shough. Yeah, he wasn't having it at all. But yeah, I think we mentioned Quinn Ewers going. I think Quinn Ewers went to the Seahawks in round 2 in this mock. So yeah, he's sort of jumped ahead of him for me. Yeah, he'd be my quarterback 5, I think, in this sort of scenario. Yeah, Giants just don't have a quarterback that's a long-term solution. So yeah, there's a viable path for game time for Tyler Shough in year 1, even. It's certainly in year 2. So yeah, at the end of the second round, more than happy to take him there. I think he's another one where he's a solid player, and I think he can sort of start quite early in his career, but he's never going to be a long-term sort of elite fantasy asset. It's just not going to happen. But as a sort of starting quarterback in Superflex leagues, you kind of, as a QB3, be more than happy with him. Obviously, plugging him and playing him on the odd occasion. You're certainly never going to be starting every week as your QB2. So yeah, if you get a quarterback at the end of the second round that does start some games, I'm sort of fine with that. I'm not expecting too much from him. He's just, yeah, at the end of the second round, there's just not too many other players that I'd rather have. So, and yeah, also it would annoy Mags a little bit that I've taken
him. Exactly that. He's such a weird prospect, just so old, not that inspiring, but you see some of his plays and you think, my God, that looks like an NFL quarterback. But then other times he just absolutely crumples in the face of pressure and just folds up, and it's just horrendous. But the NFL I think they really, really like him. So I have a feeling that he could even go higher than the start of round 3 in the NFL draft. So, and yeah, you're taking him back around 2. If you're able to get him even later than that, he's a guy that in Superflex you can take. Then if he starts a few games, you can just easily flip him for an early second, probably make
exactly.
Yeah, so it makes complete sense in Superflex. And with that brings us to the end of tonight's show, where this is the final show pre-draft, James. We've done our final pre-draft rookie mock. It'd be interesting to see how many of these picks actually come to fruition, or whether it is completely irrelevant in a few days' time. But cannot wait for the rookie drafts to get going. And yes, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us and subscribe on X and YouTube at Fantasy Wildcard, at Wildcard Dynasty. And join us for our show next Tuesday, where we are going to be reacting to the NFL draft, and we may have a special guest coming on. So look forward to that. So yes, once you have to remember, when you have the wild card, you have the power to change the game.